Hey, Galamaz here. I'm going to be talking about the continuous wall jump, or CWJ over motes, as well as a rhythm method to make the CWJ more consistent. The continuous wall jump is different than a standard wall jump in that the horizontal momentum carried over from a running jump is maintained throughout a wall jump, and that will help you cross greater distances, whereas a standard wall jump can't. And that's because a standard wall jump has to turn around to create a wall jump pose, and turning around will cancel the extra horizontal momentum you have built up earlier. And so a standard wall jump is only for moving up vertically, whereas a CWJ is more for horizontal movement. But yeah, do consider supporting me over at Twitch. I have plans to make more tutorials, and if you would like to see a specific tutorial, do let me know, and I would be glad to make one. Alright, that was the CWJ. The CWJ is a useful way of getting across the moat without the use of bomb jumping, without grapple beam, or without speed booster. This is a very common trick being used in any percent new route where you have to go to Phantoon first. And this can also apply to randomizers or bingo. Now, the CWJ, for me personally, is secondary to the diagonal bomb jump. And that's because the first jump of the CWJ is frame perfect. And there's a higher likelihood of having to rely on the diagonal bomb jump in order to get across the moat in one try. Now, if you were listening closely, you would have heard a specific set of inputs after the item was collected, and that's what I'm going to be talking about, using a rhythmic approach to getting the CWJ in a consistent manner. Alright, let's take a look at the CWJ that I've just done at full speed. The CWJ begins in this room, and more specifically, it begins by lining up with this door on the right side. And lining up just means that you're using the objects around you, or a specific set of movements, to get a exact location for Samus. So we want Samus to be in this position, so you can just hold right and run into the door, and that will put Samus in the same spot every time. And as far as the inputs go, I'm holding right and run the entire time. And my run button is B by default. And I run through the door transition. And while it's not necessary, I hold run and right the entire time. And that's because I'm focused on trying to get the first jump of the CWJ. And the jump is frame perfect. So if you're one frame too late, you will fall in the water. If you are one frame too early, you will not be in the right position to perform the CWJ. So it's a frame perfect jump. And so you hold jump the entire time. And it's not necessary to hold run while in midair. It does not do anything for Samus. But you'll know if it's time for the CWJ when you see this exact pose. Samus in this position relative to the missile and pedestal. You will only see this position if you get the frame perfect jump. And so upon collecting the item, the game will open up a message box and play the item fanfare for about 7 seconds. And since this is a practice ROM, it's not 7 seconds because the fanfare is removed. But either way, after the fanfare is over, the game is in this state, which you can see in green. In this state, the game is waiting for an input, and then it will close the message box. So in this case, I press right, the game registers it, closes the message box, and then the game continues. And then after that, it's a 2-frame window to get the wall jump, and that will carry you to the other side. And so in this case, I think this is a 2nd frame wall jump. So if I jumped 1 frame earlier, I'll still make it. And if I'm a frame too early, or if I'm a frame too late, it'll look exactly the same. So it's hard to tell visually if you're early or late on the wall jump. But just know that it's a 2-frame window, and if you don't make it, you'll fall in the moat, and you'll lose a lot of time. But going back to the item message box, the game will accept any input and it will close the message box. As I am trying out different inputs. So the game will wait for any input, so it will close the message box. So for the sake of the rhythm method, there's 25 or 24 frames, 25 or 24 frames in between these buttons. And this is a consistent way of performing the CWJ. And so I have developed a metronome for the inputs right and jump. And so if you can perform right and jump according to the metronome, you can consistently get the CWJ even if your eyes are closed. No matter if you're on CRT and console or on emulator or playing on the Nintendo Switch, you can perform CWJ using the rhythm method, provided you're in this CWJ position and the game is waiting for you to make an input. Now, if you want it to be optimal and waste no frames, you can hold right this entire time, and the game will see your right input at the first possible frame and continue. And then it'll be up to you to determine like when is the right time to jump. And many people use visual means to time their second jump. So it's whether it's the screen moving or the message box closing is when they time their jump. It varies depending on what setup you're using. So if you're on a very laggy HD TV, or if you're on a gaming monitor or CRT, it's all going to be different. And so if you want to wait on the first possible input, it'll be up to you to figure out where can you wall jump, or when can you press your second jump input. But for the sake of the rhythm method, all of that is sort of removed, and I believe the CWJ is a little more accessible to a lot more players. But since I'm waiting to be sure that the game is in this state to accept any input to close the message box, I've waited here 17 frames. So that's quarter of a second. So if those 17 frames are very important to you, you should go for the first possible frame to close the message box. But yeah, I've developed a metronome so more players can perform the CWJ very consistently. Okay, talking really quickly about backups for the CWJ in case you miss it the first time. The first option, which I highly recommend, is the diagonal bomb jump. So from here, you want to get enough running speed, so be pretty far back here, get a running jump onto this pedestal, and then try to perform the diagonal bomb jump, which I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel. It's very extensive, and there's lots of things that can go wrong with it. So there's lots of information there. The second option you can do is another CWJ, and you got two options for those, which is lining up on the outside of this door again and running in and do a running jump as you would when you're normally starting the CWJ. And the other option is to do an indoor CWJ. So you want to line up as close as you can to this door, but not go outside. So it's as far as you could possibly be on the left side of this room. And then trying again for the CWJ. So if you have Moonwalk on, you want to back up just enough so that the door frame is right behind Samus's visor, and that's how you know you're as far back in the room as possible, and you can get another attempt at CWJ. Now, if you don't have Moonwalk on, you have to line up using a different method. So when you're moving to the left, you want to angle up or down depending on your preferences, and that helps you get more control over Samus's movement. And so you can inch forward as much as you need. Try to not go too far. And my visual cue for this is looking at Samus's butt, and you want exactly 1 pixel sticking out like that. And that goes for all the poses: angle up, neutral, and angle down. So if you turn around, you'll notice that the position is not the same as I was explaining for the moonwalk, which the door frame needs to be right behind Samus's visor. So a normal turnaround will not work. So you have to get into a morph ball and turn around to the right. You can only press right for 1 to 2 frames. If you press right for over 3 frames, she'll roll over enough to be out of position. So that time I pressed right for too long, and so she was not lined up properly. So trying it again. You have to press right very quickly, and I've got it this time where you can see that Samus is lined up, her visor is lined up like right behind the door frame as we see it. And so this is the position you need to be in to perform the CWJ. And that's really all you can do as far as backups and trying it again. And performing the CWJ at this point is all visual, so it just comes down to being practiced and doing the CWJ. This is going to be the metronome segment of the video, and it's going to demonstrate the timing of the inputs right and jump. And this is when the game is waiting for you to make an input to close the message box. So your first input is to close the message box. The second input is to perform the CWJ. So taking a look. And so it is at this point where the game is waiting for you to make an input. And so this is where the rhythm method comes into play. Pressing a right jump here makes it a lot more consistent. Now, your second jump can be on frames number 24 or 25. So if you're slightly late compared to the metronome, you'll be just fine. So it sounds something like right jump, right jump. And so when this metronome is playing, try to match your inputs with the game sound. It's going to play at frames 1 and 24. Right jump, right jump. Alright, so happy practicing. The metronome is going to run for about 5 minutes.